He spent a year and a half in North Korea. A lot of bad things happened, but at least we got him home to be with his parents, where they were so happy to see him, even though he was in very tough condition, but he just passed away a little while ago.
Over and over, Otto Warmbier apologized and begged, at first calmly, then choking up and finally in tears, to be reunited with his family. 17 months later, he has finally been reunited with his parents and 2 younger siblings. Whether he's even aware of that was uncertain. North Korean officials argue Warmbier fell into a coma after taking a sleeping pill more than a year ago. They also claim that the American student had contracted a case of botulism. Doctors in the U.S. caring for Mr. Warmbier say they did not find any trace of botulism in the 22-year-old's body, but they did see that his brain tissue suffered extensive damage, and that accounted for his unresponsive wakefulness. That is, until he passed away a week after returning home. Much remains unknown about how Otto's health deteriorated. How did a brilliant student from an Ohio suburb with hopes of becoming an investment banker end up imprisoned in a pariah state? Why was he released in a coma? And could his death serve as a flashpoint for continued tensions between Pyongyang and Washington? It's what we'll attempt to answer in Peninsula 24 today.
And joining me in the studio is, to my left, Joanna Hosaniak, Deputy Director of the Citizens Alliance for North Korean Human Rights. It's really good to see you on stage today.
Thank you for having me.
And of course, to my right, as always, Dr. Chang-su. Now, so we've just been struck with very disturbing news that Otto Warmbier, so the 22-year-old American student who had flown to North Korea for travel reasons, returned home in a vegetative state about a year and a half after that has passed away. Now, many questions, few answers to this. So, a medevac flight touched down in Cincinnati last week carrying this student in a vegetative state. Doctors say they did not see any sign of physical abuse, but and his family and the doctors don't buy North Korean regime's explanation that he contracted botulism for some reason and fell into coma after taking a sleeping pill. Now, what was your immediate reaction upon hearing this news, learning of this state?
Well, first of all, you know, I felt really sorry for his family and friends, and my condolences go to his family and friends right now. But of course, first suspicion arises why he was in such state in the first place, a seemingly healthy young man that is released out of the coma and dies soon after being, you know, transferred to medical facilities in the States. It of course also raises a suspicion whether he wasn't released just because North Korea knew that his conditions were deteriorating and were afraid that he would die in detention, which would raise even further suspicion if a young man, you know, died in facilities in North Korea.
But so let's go over North Korea's explanation, although many of us don't buy it. But botulism, Dr. Kim, what does that ring a bell? Does that mean anything to you?
Yes, it does ring a bell to me. Because botulism is one of nerve agents that can be used in biological chemical warfare. And as a matter of fact, Western countries have been practicing, if North Korea agents use that kind of botulism to spread this kind of disease, it's going to cause huge casualties on the part of the victims, either Korea or Japan. So we are familiar with the kind of botulism. But anyway, the thing that really caused him death is stop of oxygen to his brain. So this is a very diverse loss of brain tissues for a long period of time, and it's just spread out throughout all his brain. So we have to wait and see, because we have all kind of forensic experts in the United States and also medical doctors, and many of them will have a much better access to all the documents that have collected over the last 15 months, and particularly with the University of Cincinnati Medical Center. So we have to wait and see, and I'm sure they have the technology to do what was the real cause of his death and how influential was North Korean leadership behind his death and comatose status as well.
Well, how exactly his current medical condition came about is up for a debate, of course, but after the seemingly healthy 22-year-old American student winds up with a severe brain damage of some sort and ends up, after shortly being sentenced to 15 years of hard labor, we cannot but help be reminded of the brutality of North Korea's notorious prison camps. We've heard stories of defectors as well as those foreigners who have been in those detention camps, that horrifying stories of that, and thousands of people are subject to inhumane conditions and torture, and that's according to a UN inquiry in 2014. What do we know about these camps? What do we know, what goes on in those camps exactly that we, the rest of the world, aren't aware of?
Well, first of all, we have to differentiate between camps and detention center for North Koreans and those that are held for only foreign nationals. North Korea maintains special facilities in North Korea and has done it, well, since very long time. First reports that we had of foreigners being detained were really amnesty report, which was in the 60s. And these were supporters of the North Korean regime that went to Pyongyang to actually kind of spread Kim Il-sung's propaganda into foreign languages. There is a testimony of Ali Lameda, a communist from Venezuela, who was detained after he realized that this propaganda is actually being used to glorify Kim Il-sung, and he did not agree with that. And that was his first testimony of kind of highlighting the detention facilities in North Korea. Amnesty also was one time admitted to North Korea and was shown these facilities, but these were special facilities where walls were just painted and they could feel the fresh smell of the paint and so on. These are special type of facilities that are not that horrible as those detentions and prison camps, which are notorious for the worst human rights violations. So for people who are, for example, deported from China, a majority of them women, different sorts of torture may be used depending whether they were, for example, having contacts with Christian missionaries or with the foreigners. Also, there is abortion or reports about abortion or infanticides going on. But North Korea also maintains this inhumane system of political prison camps where families up to 3 generations can be, even with children, can be punished and can be detained there for 20, 30 years. Seemingly, many of them are not even, will never see the outside world again. They are supposed to be forced labor there, and they are supposed to die there. Even there are reports that some of the children are even being born in those camps and they never saw the outside world. There have been only few releases from those camps in the past, so we really don't know about the conditions. However, the forced labor, for example, 20 hours a day, even minimal food ratios, are the kind of tools that they use to oppress these people and to kind of instill threat and make them not to think. That's what these prisoners usually report, that when you are subjected to these inhumane conditions, you stop really thinking. Your only thinking is about survival, about the next day. Unfortunately, majority of, according to former prisoners and even former guards who also escaped to South Korea from those political prison camps, say that majority of people die within 1 to 2 years in those camps because the conditions are so inhumane.
Right, but what you're saying is, Joanna Hosaniak, is that where Otto Warmbier was held, it's different from these prison camps.
Exactly.
So he was held in a detention center for foreigners. Now, although doctors have said that they cannot trace any kind of physical abuse of any kind, are we suspecting that there was some kind of an abuse, or what can we induce from this situation?
So I was really shocked because the North Korean said he was affiliated with some, for example, like Friendship, United Methodist Church in Cincinnati, and also the Society in the UVA.
Secret society.
Yes. I noticed that, and there's something, I'm sure his family all knows about this, because and I'm sure that's why I'm telling you, you have to wait for some more time, because there will be more witnesses and testimonies before Congress, and we'll get to have a much better understanding what really happened to him, whether he was under tremendous coerced. So I think it is court's confession, because it's not a typical American guy making that kind of apology or concession. No way. So he was under tremendous coercion. It was a court confession. So there's a lot of things for the North Koreans to manipulate this for their own political benefits. That is, they are very kind, and this guy made a terrible mistake by trying to tearing off this kind of banner. So it was his fault. And behind that, it was the United States who had taken a very hostile policy to the Republic. So that was the theme, but I don't buy it, because this is not just a typical democratic society. It's a very difficult. This is one hereditary dynasty in North Korea who is taking care of, even though they said they are taking care of their own private citizens, but look at what he did for the last 5 years, killing of his brother, uncle, and even his half brother. This is something we just cannot expect from any ordinary country. So you have to have some suspicion why it happened, for political reasons, trying to show this is a part of the American hostile policy toward North Korea. That's why they have to detain this guy, and that's why they developed this nuclear missile systems, missile weapons for the last two years, particularly.
If I may add to that, at the same time, North Korea tried to avoid direct torture on foreigners. We have really lack of cases. Those that were detained and released, they reported about mental and medical hardships, including food kind of hardships, that they very poor conditions in these facilities. However, they, except for Robert Park, who said that he was tortured and abused in various manners, the other foreigners did not report on direct physical abuse, because that would create even more suspicion. You know, North Korea denies at the international community. They always say it's perfect in our country. We don't torture people, we don't abuse them. There are no concentration camps in North Korea. So torturing foreigners, it would be a testimony, you know, to the fact that they actually do that. They rarely do that. However, the conditions are inhumane, and it's not really important what has happened to him, I think. We are focusing on a wrong kind of fact, because we will never know. Otto is dead, unfortunately. North Korea will never release us the documentation unless in the future we will have access to the secret files of communist police if they don't destroy, and we will know that, as we do have in Central Europe. However, the major point here is why he was detained. This is completely inhumane, to, you know, unproportionate in any law, domestic or international law, to detain someone for trying to take stupid poster from the wall. You have many, you know, teenagers doing crazy stuff sometimes. You find them. You know, it's completely unproportionate, and this reveals the brutality of this system. Definitely. And I think we have to focus on that. Also, second thing, why he was for such a long time kept incommunicado with his family, and that, can you imagine that, for example, your family is being held in hospital here in South Korea, and the doctors for 1 year do not report to you, don't call you that someone is in such state? It's completely bizarre and inhumane situation, and we have to focus on that, you know, why it has happened in this way, why he wasn't released upon the emergency immediately to look for conditions. Of course, he wasn't, because North Korea is, you know, even if the doctors made such a decision, somebody else has to make an order from the top. Party members or secret police is making a medical decision instead of doctors, and this is the problem in this society, and we have to focus on that, how brutal this system is.
North Korea has a well-thumbed playbook, if you will, for detained American citizens and who are valuable, but you did touch upon this. They use this as a diplomatic bargaining chip for the regime. Now, the release of Otto Warmbier is one that's all too familiar to us. Most Americans detained in the North were released after visits like Bill Clinton or Jimmy Carter. Would you say this is another point scored by North Korea, or has this been a failure of its hostage diplomacy?
I really don't know what went on at the inner circle of Pyongyang leadership, but from an outsider, we can come up with totally different interpretation and justifications. Maybe this is a multiple purpose kind of diplomacy, while they can just send the order to the United States before he dies, and also they can use this as a kind of as an opportunity to invite high-profile, ranking American congressmen or MPs, so that they might have look for some kind of negotiation as a kind of breakaway. So I don't know. Maybe depending on how you look at them, and they have their own justification. But we have to be more stick to our own interpretation. And this is a terrible situation. We have to really be reminded that we are dealing with a very brutal regime in the north.
He spent 1.5 years in North Korea. A lot of bad things happened, but at least we got him home to be with his parents, where they were so happy to see him, even though he was in very tough condition, but he just passed away a little while ago. It's a brutal regime.
President Donald Trump has released a statement saying that this is brutality, and that quoting his words, he said that North Korea will be dealt with regarding this. Now, Rex Tillerson, the U.S. Secretary of State, in his statement, he said that North Korea will be held accountable for this. What are we foreseeing in the next couple of weeks and months in terms of U.S. policy vis-a-vis North Korea?
Well, I think U.S. government is now at such a position where it will have to deal with a very angry public of what has happened, and why these certain tourist agencies are actually allowing to garner some kind of young Americans, flowing them to Pyongyang under the conditions where something might happen to them. So I think there will be a very strong drive to put a ban on travels to North Korea, and I would not be surprised if it if it comes within this year, and if some sort of bill passes through the U.S. Parliament.
The travel agency just like a few hours after the report of Otto Warmbier's death, has announced that they will no longer be taking Americans for the tour. So they're banning Americans from their tours. But Dr. Kim, tell us, what in your view will happen in terms of U.S. policy vis-a-vis North Korea?
This will have negative, no question about it, have a very negative impact on the long-term North Korea-United States relationship. And it also has side effects in our relationship with North Korea, because many people were actually suggesting that we might think about a nuclear freeze as a kind of breakthrough. So I think this kind of idea will die away for at least a certain period of time because of this particular tragedy of Otto Warmbier. It will have a tremendous impact, and it will be remembered at a very important kind of game changer in relation with, even with North Korea as well. It has a tremendous impact on us.
I mean, I think I would hate to see this politicized, because not only for Americans, but I think this angers everyone, every human being all across the globe, because this is really a humanitarian human rights issue. This is more of a human rights issue than anything else. Not a national issue, not a not a North Korea vis-a-vis another country issue, but it's really a brutality against a human being who is mistreated. However, we are already seeing this being politicized. Some are blaming the Obama administration for not having been able to save Otto Warmbier during that term. And also, we do really sense, Dr. Kim, that this will have impact on North Korea-U.S. relations. In doing so, of course, we cannot but think about South Korea in this equation. And South Korea, of course, with the Moon Jae-in administration coming in, they've been floating the idea of perhaps going with the dialogue along with sanctions pressure, so that we could bring them to denuclearization. However, this could go through a bit of a change as we encounter this Otto Warmbier situation, because, as I said, it's not an American student. It's really just any student, any human being, and this would definitely impact the South Korean government. And not only that, but the upcoming South Korea-U.S. summit in just a week or so from today.
This is a very, as a matter of fact, one effect to this is we are constantly reminded that North Korea is a very strange regime, and they are not paid due attention in regard to the human rights by their own standards. But this is the standard we just cannot accept it from the outside world.
If I may add,
Sure.
I hope that this case will just send a message to the South Korean government, especially progressive type of South Korean government, to make their priorities straight. And what I mean by that is to show that Americans, for example, they do care about their citizens that were, for example, detained in North Korea. What has South Korean government did so far through the engagement to raise the issues of South Koreans being detained there? The civilians during Korean War, about 100,000, still unresolved cases and still families waiting for them. Over 400 abductees, South Korean abductees. Their families have petitioned South Korean government, Red Cross and so on during meetings and so on. Never almost allowed to meet, never, never explanation came about their whereabouts, what happened to them, never allowing contacts. The separated families issue, allowing only a few hundred people, this is not a reunion of families. This is only one time after which these people cannot even write to each other or pick up the phone. We should stop this false unconditionality. We have to start doing what international community is doing and setting up certain stronger conditions upon engagement. Engagement is good when it's meaningful engagement. But what is being sent from the President Moon administration is that if they give up on certain things, again, the administration is considering unconditional engagement. This is not the way to go, and I hope President Moon has learned his lesson, because international community will be watching over what he is doing in the next future. International community has moved far away already. There is a call to refer North Korean leadership to International Criminal Court.
Correct.
That means that people who are traveling, officials can be arrested even in foreign countries. And President Moon has to really come to terms with that and set up their policies straight. And I hope they will start advocating also for the South Korean citizens, not only looking for the North Korean government interests and what they want, but also what the South Korean citizens want and what they have been advocating so far. Engagement is a great way to actually resolve certain outstanding, long-standing issues.
Right, and President Moon's pick for Foreign Affairs Minister Kang Kyung-hwa, she's been an active member of the United Nations, and in terms of advocating human rights in doing so. So hopefully her addition will bring about a different kind of change, a fresh new change to the South Korean government stands from previous administrations as well, in terms of looking at the human rights level, the human rights conditions, and that in that aspect, and rather than just the nuclear weapons and North Korean government, and in that perspective. And hopefully we'll be able to solve out this situation. But for now, we'll have to wait and see how the situation develops and impacts the U.S. government, impacts the South Korean government in moving forward in a more positive way. Hopefully, Otto Warmbier's death will not go in vain in terms of that. Let me ask you, Joanna Hosaniak, for your take on how you felt the filming went today.
As you said, to raise it, because we always tend to talk about military, about nuclear weapons and so on, and we always kind of diminish what is really going on in the ground in terms of normal North Korean population, but also, foreigners and so on. So to kind of highlight this issue is a great opportunity for me.
Well, thank you for shedding light on that issue.
Thank you.
And Dr. Kim, this was a bit of a deviation from our normal subject. How did you find this suggestion?
I want to know that there are many South Koreans and also many foreign movement activists like Joanna. They're really been working on this issue, human rights violation in North Korea. And there's also a lot of good reports coming from for example, like HRNK, Committee for Human Rights in North Korea. And we're going to have a lot of international seminars coming up actually next week. Greg Scalabrio will be here in town talking about the all kind of terrible political, encampment, the terrible life in North Korea. And I really, really appreciate the foreigners, many, Polish, many Americans, and the UK. They are really helpful in just correcting us how bad our perception was in terms of, human rights violations. As you told, there's a lot of people who defected And there are still out of 10 million, separated families. Only I was noticed there were 4,000 so far have met their relatives in North Korea. So this
and just
still,
once.
Just once.
Just once.
So it's a long time. We still have a long way to go before resolving this kind of humanitarian issues. But also, how are we going to improve our relationship with North Korea, and how are we going to have a better relation with North Korea? So this is a very difficult situation we are facing right now.
Yep. Well, thank you both for shedding light on this very important issue, and I'd like to thank our viewers for staying with us throughout today. Now, our hearts and prayers are with Otto Warmbier's family and friends and those loved ones, and we'd like to express our condolences as well. And that brings us to the end of this week's Peninsula 24, and we will be back next week.